Karen Reed now faces a very aggressive special prosecutor who is going after the reporters she talked to.
Apparently, the prosecution is trying to prove that Karen Reed has allegedly been contradicting herself. I'm Lainey Law.
And I'm attorney Andrew Myers. Well, the thing about that is, and the other thing is, there's a new attorney in the case. There's a new attorney who has just come into the case. But before we get to that, the special prosecutor, Hank Brennan, is going after ABC, NBC, Vanity Fair for their very recent article, and also notably Boston Magazine. Way back in the fall of 2023, with the Karen Reed trial coming up, Boston Magazine, which is a very well-read, glossy magazine. It covers, if you're not from the Boston area, it covers the sports scene. It covers the entertainment scene, what performers are coming to town, the shows that are happening in the local theaters, what are the good restaurants in Boston. So it's a pretty widely read publication. It used to be in the grocery store and other places. But now, of course, I stumble upon that article, as most people did, online, 18-page article in Boston Magazine. It was very informative. The title went something along the lines of "The Case That Has Divided the Town of Canton." And it did a fairly good job of summarizing the case as well as you can in 18 pages. Well, that is one of the publications that Hank Brennan is going after. He has filed a subpoena to get the raw tapes that came out of interviews with Karen Reed. Generally, the way a reporter does it, and I used to be a reporter many years ago, you sit down with a subject and you talk frankly and openly and you record it all. And then you sit down at your word processor and decide what's important and edit it out. Well, Brennan wants the tapes and the other materials that came out of those interviews, and he filed a subpoena to get it. Now he has filed an affidavit and a memorandum. And before we get to the new attorney, we're going to take a look at that. This is Hank Brennan's renewed motion for all audio recordings, interview notes, emails, text messages, and voicemails in the possession of Gretchen Voss and or Metro Corp. Gretchen Voss is the reporter who wrote the story for Boston Magazine, and obviously Metro Corp would be the corporation that owns Boston Magazine. Now comes the Commonwealth and respectfully requests this honorable court, pursuant to Mass Ars Crim P 17, which is the criminal discovery rule in Massachusetts, to reconsider an order of January 23rd, 2024, and issue a new court order to Metro Corp, DBA Boston Magazine, Gretchen Voss, Corporation Service Company, Commonwealth respectfully requesting that this court order Gretchen Voss and the keeper of the records of Boston Magazine to produce to the criminal clerk's office of the Norfolk Superior Court the following. And they want the complete audio record of all interviews between Gretchen Voss and the defendant Karen Reed, including but not limited to June 20th of 2023 and July 13th of 2023. And the motion goes on to itemize all of the things that Hank Brennan wants. And he cites all the law. Massachusetts has, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, if you remember to ask me, Massachusetts has a very weak journalist privilege. And it's sad. As a former reporter, I take that side. I don't make any apologies. The defendant, Karen Reed, engaged in 2 recorded interviews with the reporter Voss. The first recorded interview occurred on June 20th of 2023. The Commonwealth was previously provided a 3-hour and 19-minute recording for that interview. The second recorded interview occurred on July 23 of 2024. The Commonwealth was provided a 14-minute recording of that interview. So you see, they cut down what they gave the Commonwealth before. The defendant engaged in a third interview with Voss that was not recorded. During the unrecorded third interview, Voss took notes. At some point, the defendant sent text messages and left voice messages for Voss. So this goes on to explain that an example supporting relevance of redacted information and the Commonwealth's right to all of the audio recordings, including statements of all participants in the redacted statements, is presented below. The excerpts that follow are just a few of many examples demonstrating why the Commonwealth says it is entitled to both the defendant's complete statements and the statements of other participants in the interviews. Otherwise, the Commonwealth will be deprived from providing full context the defendant's admissions and impeded from providing the fairest picture of the defendant's statements and admissions to the jury. So you get what's going on here, right? I mean, these lengthy interviews were given, and they cut out a lot. Hank Brennan, on behalf of the Commonwealth, is saying, hey, we want to get the rest of it because what was provided had redactions. They cut stuff out. And we want all of it because we think Karen Reed, and going around and talking to ABC, NBC, Vanity Fair, and in this particular case, Boston Magazine, we think that if we figure it all out, we'll be able to connect, contradictions.
Mm-hmm. And over here, we have coming up her June 2023 interview with Voss, the defendant, professed. I, drinking like I normally would, I tend to talk a lot when I'm out in those. And when people see the bar footage, I'm very much in the middle of a group. And Liza's seen it too. This is at McCarthy's and at the second bar as well that I tend to stop drinking. And, I'm very extroverted around people when I'm in that environment. But we weren't. And then we have a redaction.
And then it's redacted. And then Yannetti cut in, well, you.
Yeah, I've had in my 20s, I've had and then
she discusses medical issues, and we all know that she did have a number of surgeries for a medical condition that she has. So the point that Brennan is making is that the redaction interrupts the defendant's admission on a critical issue, her drinking alcohol allegedly on the night in question. When the redacted audio resumes, the discussion has shifted from consumption of alcohol to a medical issue. So he's saying, there was probably some more that was said in there and we want it.
Mm-hmm.
So further in her June 20th, 2023 interview, the defendant makes more admissions relative to the issue of alcohol consumption. And Lainey, thank you. I'm doing the questioning and you're doing Karen Reed. Thank you very much. So in this June 20th, 23 interview, the question was, and is the level of intoxication pretty high here for everybody?
It's happy.
Yeah.
It's
because you'd had a lot to drink, right?
I wouldn't say I'd had like a normal amount.
What's normal?
Like a vodka tonic every 40 minutes.
Okay. And so are you feeling like buzzed? And I'm not judging. I'm just trying to get a sense.
Yeah, buzzed.
Okay. Shortly after these admissions, the interview continues. Yeah. Okay. So then Jen's trying to get you to go and you are insisting I'm leaving with John. Redaction.
Yeah, this is I had a water. I had sips of water at Waterfall, yeah, but I hadn't had anything to drink before about 9:15 that night. Everyone I met up with that night had been drinking long before.
Yeah.
I went out, so I would assume their level of intoxication was higher than mine.
The defendant's admission of drinking a vodka tonic every 40 minutes is followed by a redaction shortly after. Immediately after the redaction, the resumed audio then demonstrates a non sequitur claiming to consuming sips of water at the waterfall. The post-redaction assertion that she drank sips of water at the waterfall is contradicted, according to Mr. Brennan, of course, by the defendant herself in her interview with 2020, where she claimed,
I had probably about 4 and not 4 that I completed either. I didn't drink maybe more than a few sips at the waterfall.
Notably, the defendant's June 2023 version claiming to have consumed, quote, sips of water at waterfall, unquote, is also contradicted by evidence presented at the defendant's previous trial. Now, another example supporting the relevance of all the participants' statements is exemplified in the July 13th, 2023 interview, where Voss again explores the issue of alcohol consumption. Voss refers to the bartender at the waterfall, that's the second bar, on the evening of the alleged collision, and questions. Okay, she said to me that we never served her.
They didn't.
Mr. Jackson then intervenes and says, never said, never served her?
I didn't drink there.
Okay. Redaction. Edit. So, okay, then I need to go back. For some reason, I thought they had like your drinks by that time.
I was at a bar before and they knew by the bills.
That the bar before?
But I didn't really drink at the second bar. I just socialized. And this is the same girl. She's heavy.
Yeah.
There's only like 2 bartenders. That's the owner's daughter.
Oh, she's gruff?
She testified before the grand jury that it didn't appear drunk. I was talking. I was fine. There were no arguing, and no, she didn't serve me. I never went to the bar.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So I must have conflated the two places. Redaction. Edit.
Okay, all right. We were at both places for 90 minutes. So 90 minutes at the end of the night with no alcohol.
Right. Redaction.
I told her that we were redaction.
Yeah.
She said 3. Did you hear that? Redaction to be found by the 15th.
So Brennan is arguing here that without the full unredacted audio of all of the defendant and participant statements, the Commonwealth will be unfairly blocked from obtaining and providing the jury relevant evidence that places the defendant's admissions in full context. Well, I think it's one of those situations where you have to be careful what you're asking for, because we don't know what the full context is. She may well have explained herself well. So at the bottom, Mr. Brennan says, the Commonwealth respectfully requests that this court allow the Commonwealth's motion. An affidavit in support of this motion is attached. But there was more information here. For the above stated reasons, this motion should be allowed. So I guess what Mr. Brennan wants to do is pretty much take all the statements that were made to the TV networks, NBC and ABC, and rather than going to New York or out of the state, he's subpoenaing this stuff in through the local affiliates, WCVB, which is the ABC station, and NBC 10, which is obviously the NBC 10 station, and he wants to piece them all together. Now, A, that might be very tedious. B, as others have pointed out, one of the discrepancies is which door he might have gone in. Well, there were 2 doors. Well, when she says he went in the front door, was it this door? Was it that door? And does it really make a difference? Is that a substantive difference? And that, okay, all right. So she contradicts herself with respect to how much she drank. So what? Don't most people that, I hate to cast aspersions, but don't most people that drink not necessarily, oh, well, I just had one. Let's go, Lainey, let's go out and have one.
I'm also curious what's going to happen if they no longer have like that information. Like, I mean, they probably do. They probably keep their stuff for years and years and years. But what if they happen to not have the unredacted audio? Would they get in trouble for that?
Well, that's a good question. If it was an intentional, yeah, it's destruction of evidence. If it was unintentional, and I'm glad you asked that question, because as you know, I used to be a reporter many, 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 many years ago. And many years ago, when I was in college, I had the opportunity to interview Anthony Burgess, who is the author of A Clockwork Orange, which was a fantastic movie, a fantastic book. And I actually had the opportunity to sit down with Anthony Burgess and do an interview with him. And you know what? I still have that tape to this day. And it's a cassette tape. Whether the tape still plays or not, that's a whole different question. On the other hand, one time, Jimmy Carter walked into the radio station that I was working at without an appointment, and I made him wait because I was busy. But I finally sat down and I talked to Jimmy Carter. I interviewed Jimmy Carter on one of those old reel-to-reel recorders. And it was at that radio station, which was a lot of pressure. I was trying to do the news on an AM side, an FM side, edit it, put it onto carts, feed the computer, and doing 1,000 other things. I didn't save that tape.
Oh my God!
So I interviewed a guy who at that point was Jimmy Who. That's what they called him when he came into New Hampshire. He was Jimmy Who. And he won, and the rest is history. And I would have a recorded interview with Jimmy Carter.
And that's kind of what where my thought process was going, because things like the leading stuff happens all the time, because especially when you have like an hour of footage, it takes up so much space. It's hard to manage all that type of information.
Well, back then, the radio station was cheap. I don't mind saying it. They were very cheap, and we only had so much tape, and it was that old reel-to-reel 5-inch reel recording tape. And, we had to reuse it after we would take an interview and cut it down into the bites we needed for that broadcast. Often we would tape over the stuff. Now, that wasn't intentional. It was stupid. I'll admit it. Do I wish I had an interview with Jimmy Carter that I did? Yes. But, anyhow, so the answer to your question is if they intentionally destroyed it, it's destruction of evidence. And that's a problem for them. Now, the reporter, I would think that Gretchen I don't know her, but I can just imagine that she knew the importance of what she was doing because she knew the town of Canton was erupting. There were two sides, as she eloquently pointed out in her 18-page article in Boston Magazine. It was a great article. It was a good read. And I have to admit, it was my real introduction to this case because I'll be honest and say that I didn't really follow it at all. But I think that goes for a lot of people in New England. Boston Magazine is very well read. It's a great publication. And I think that she must have had an idea of the import of what she was doing. So, and the other point I should have made is that in my old dinosaur days in broadcasting, we used tape. Tape is like, who uses it? It's all digital. So you can save everything. I mean, all of these episodes we don't have an inch of tape. It's all recorded somewhere. They call it the cloud. But anyhow, it's all there. So I would imagine she still has it. And I would imagine ABC, NBC, I used to do a little bit of work with network people. And I would imagine that they save every inch of it because you never know. You just never know. So I'm going to say, I'm not going out on a limb to say that all of the raw stuff from ABC and NBC would be kept. The Vanity Fair article just came out recently, so I'm gonna bet that of course she has all of that. The Boston Magazine, I'm gonna say the chances are 90% to 10 that she has it. So anyhow, it's a sad thing in the rules of evidence. The rules of evidence in Massachusetts don't really favor reporters. A lot of states have a journalist's privilege, which protects people, which protects reporters, journalists, TV reporters, and the rest against this kind of invasive pry into what goes into their creating of a work, and it protects them, and that's the reason for the privilege. Massachusetts does not have a statute that protects journalists. It doesn't have a strong law. Arguments are made case by case, and that's basically what it says. And the courts have to weigh the factors. The public interest in freedom of expression and protecting those who are creating, news, entertainment, art, and that kind of thing, weighing that against the need for justice. So that's done on a case-by-case basis in Massachusetts, and it really, in my view, it sucks, but in any word. Will this be allowed? My guess is that it probably will be allowed. But the more important question, as I was saying before, is what impact does it have on the Karen Read case? Because, again, not a nice thing to say, but you know me, I'll say it anyhow. Do all drinkers tell the truth about how many they had the night before, much less, a year later? I mean, come on. So, all right. That might go to the count that has to do with leaving the scene of an accident, but it has nothing to do with the second degree M, and nothing to do with it at all. I mean, so Mr. Brennan can pry all he wants. I know I'm going to get nasty comments about this. I can see him coming in now because I do read all the comments when I get up early with the dog. But, is this really going to yield anything productive that's really going to turn the tide in this case? Hank, I don't think so. But I might be wrong. I've been wrong before. I don't know. The other thing I was going to mention before we took off is that there is a new mystery attorney, just as we're recording this episode, who has come in. Yeah. Motion for admission pro hoc vice of Robert Alessi. Pro hoc vice means you bring somebody in from another jurisdiction. Suppose I'm working on a case in Massachusetts and there's an attorney in New York who I really like and who really has an area of expertise. I want to bring him in. He comes in pro hoc vice, as though he was a member of our bar. So that's what's happening here. David R. Yannetti of the firm Yannetti Criminal Defense Law Firm and a member in good standing of the Massachusetts Bar hereby moves to admit pro hoc vice Robert Alessi so that he may associate in as counsel of record for the defendant in the above captioned matter on the following grounds. And then it just goes on to say that he's a partner in a New York law firm. I don't know if we really need to dox him, but it's all public record. Defendant Karen Reed has requested that Mr. Alessi be associated in as counsel of record in the above captioned matter. Good cause exists to grant this motion because Mr. Alessi has specialized skill and knowledge in representing defendants in matters of this nature. Should the court grant this motion, I will act as co-counsel during the pendency of this matter. You have to say that. If I bring in another attorney into one of my cases, you have to tell the Massachusetts court, I'll be there. I'll be watching. 9 times out of 10, they're better than me in that area that you bring them in for. But Yannetti is telling the court, I'll be there. In conjunction with this motion, Mr. Alessi has paid his fee. And so wherefore, for good cause shown, David R. Yannetti respectfully requests that this motion for admission pro hoc vice be allowed.
So what is this registration fee? Because it's not approving them for the bar. It's just for this one case, correct?
Correct. But Massachusetts wants its money. I mean, they have to go out and spend money on a special prosecutor. They need their $75,000, darn it.
They don't need you to be a bar as long as you got the money.
I mean, Massachusetts, I remember there was one governor who said, I will not raise taxes, and he sure didn't. But he raised every fee, every toll, every user's fee, everything else he could get his grubby little hands on before he went on to the Olympics. He raised everything else. So, Massachusetts loves to levy these payments on people. So in any event, that's what's going on now. There are a bunch of other motions that Mr. Brennan has brought. Again, NBC, ABC, and Vanity Fair. This one pretty much tells you what the story is, so we don't need to go through every single one of them laboriously. But here we go. There's another motion hearing coming up. We still have the sword of Damocles hanging over the attorneys with the January 27th hearing date, trial date. And we don't know whether my guess is that it'll be continued, but we don't know that. And my guesses aren't always that great. So, thank you, everybody, for commenting. We've gotten a lot of comments on our recent episodes on the Karen Reed case, and we will continue to follow it.
Thank you, guys, everybody who watches our videos and watches until the end. We really appreciate your comments. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel if you're not already, and thank you very much.
The other comment I was going to make is, again, this is a controversial case, as Gretchen Voss said in her Boston Magazine article. The tensions are flaring. Tensions are really flaring, and I see it in the comments. And I don't mind. You've seen some comments telling me that I'm wrong, and I don't delete them. I don't delete any comments telling me I'm wrong. I'm a big boy. I can take it. I've told the story before about how when I was in media and we would drive down the street in our vehicles that had the logo of the station, people would roll down their windows and say, "You." So I'm a big boy. I can take it, but don't personalize it. Don't say, you're a this or you're a that. Tell us why you think that so-and-so is not a good person. Tell us why you think the case isn't being handled properly by so-and-so. That really opens all of our minds up to, thinking. It makes us more honest if we listen to our opponents. Mm-hmm. All right, enough of my rant.
Now we'll take you guys to the grocery store.
Whether you're in the grocery store, the gas station, or anywhere else, please remember to be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through. And the same goes for our comments section. We want you to comment, but be nice, be kind, be positive if you can. And thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.